Hi, it's Whitney Wiley, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Love Your Work. And today I have with me not only a guest for the show, but he's a friend. He is a fellow runner. We met actually running a race in Hawaii, going way back, way back. How you doing, Jason?
Doing great, doing great. Thanks for having me, Whitney. This is awesome.
Absolutely. I'm happy that you're here. Actually, I should say his full name is Jayson Phillips. Jason is a software engineering manager and an instructor, a coder, all things kind of technical. None of the things that I know anything about. So this is going to be not only fun to talk with Jason, but I'm going to learn some things along the. Well, no, I'm not going to learn anything along the way.
I
I'm
got
not
you,
even
Whitney.
going
I
to
got
pretend.
you.
I'm not even going to pretend. I spent the morning working on trying to do some things on Canva. And so I know that's like the graphic side, but you and I'm assuming people like you, people you manage, um, those are the kinds of things that you do on the back end side that make it possible for someone like me who has no graphic design experience to be able to do fun things, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's quite a few of us who also started in the design world. Like I started out in design, and I originally didn't like programming. I thought it was boring. I thought there was no creativity. And then it wasn't until the web started to really become this household thing, and I learned about web design and web development that it's like, okay, I can nerd out on code and still be creative. This is cool. So yeah, in particular, what I've been in the last few years has been in education. So building platforms like a Canva, but for learning. So if you can imagine all the things that go into a place like Udemy or LinkedIn Learning, like
Okay.
uh,
In Kajabi and things like that.
yeah,
Okay, cool. Cool. I like that.
yeah,
So, you mentioned that you didn't think it was creative on the front end. Were you always a creative person and you felt like you wanted to be involved in work or careers that allowed you to be creative, or you just thought it wasn't creative?
yeah. It's interesting. I grew up in a household where there was a lot of music played, a lot of music playing. My brother was a DJ. That's kind of how I got influenced into starting to DJ. My dad used to play the flute and do all these elaborate paintings on the wall that I'm pretty sure my mom wasn't always happy about. My mom would
Actually on
sing,
the wall or things
yeah,
you had hung on the wall?
not on the wall. Like, so our walls had like wainscoting, and basically that became the frame for these paintings. One time it was a 3 panel across the entire hallway of the Brooklyn Bridge. So that was very interesting scale. My brother did a lot of graffiti. My mom draw and doodle a lot and would always like sing and make up songs in her head. And so there was always this love of creativity and music growing up. And going into high school, I actually went to high school for art and wanted to go into an art program for college, but was pretty good at math and took well to technology. I used to love using the computer when I was young, going to the library every Saturday. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do everything I need to do. I'll behave. I'll get all my homework done. I'll do my chores just so I can go play on the computer at the library for 45 minutes and then go to the skate rink and then come back, draw and doodle, create comic books. So I've always had this mix of being very curious around a lot of technical things and how things work,
Mm,
but always wanting to like be creative and design and like draw and build like the most imaginative things I could ever possibly think of.
wow.
Um,
So,
and so that, oh,
are
sorry.
you someone who did you build computers or computer components and things like that when early on?
Yeah. So in high school, we were, I think I had a web TV, which was like the first foray to having like the internet in my house.
Mm,
And I figured out how to hack that thing so I could play music on it. Figured out how to kind of go to different websites on it that it originally didn't allow. And then in college, I kind of had like a mini computer shop going via Craigslist. I would buy old computers, then go buy parts from a computer store, rehab them all, and then just sell folks new, kind of breathe new life into computers and sell them. And it was in exploring kind of art school and how exorbitant those prices were even back in 99. Um, that I was like, all right, well, I'm still pretty good at math. I enjoy math a lot, and technical stuff interests me. I'll go jump into computer science and math as majors. And I dropped them both. Calculus
That's
3.
math, right? I dropped math major too, so I feel you. I feel you.
Calculus 3 gave me all the reality I needed 3 times because I failed it twice.
I fell out, dropped out at ring theory. It's the one thing standing between me and a math degree is ring theory.
Oh man, see, Cal 3, once I got that C plus, I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm no matter any of the other grades I got in school, that C plus is the one I'm most proud of because I finally got it. And yeah, so it was interesting because in that part, what I actually ended up doing was shifting to a new hybrid program we had that was a mix of programming, but with creativity and 3D modeling and 3D animation. So that kind of got me a bit back into thinking about things where I was like, all right, I could still be highly technical, but there's something more creative here. Like I can go be the next super animator at Pixar. And as luck would have it, I was working at a DJ school while I was going to school in New York called Scratch DJ Academy. And it was there that I got to kind of really hone my love for music and kind of jump back into DJing. I was like, all right, maybe I'll pursue this and I'll just do things on the side to kind of keep the hustle going. And I had the first opportunity to work on their website while I was there. And that actually gave me my start in web development. And from there, I went to the US Tennis Association and did a bunch of work for the US Open in 2004. And that blew the doors open on my career.
That is cool. That's really cool. So, what is your favorite thing about it? I hear you talking creativity, but what is it that you love about what you're doing?
Problem solving. I think the first piece is problem solving. It's while there's a lot of math and a lot of analysis and a lot of hand to keyboard coding, a lot of that is the end result of problem solving. It's and in building products on like the web and for computers in particular, it's in the case with you and Canva, building a tool where I know there's a Whitney who says, hey, I need to be able to design this new flyer for my next episode. I don't need all the power of Photoshop. I just need something that allows me to kind of get my creative thoughts together. And for us, it's, well, how do we solve that problem?
Dog to do. Don't forget that part.
Yes. And, you know, the problem solving aspect there is like, well, how do we solve that problem? And before we talk about the code, what makes the best, in that case, design experience? And I'm a big fan of Canva myself. I think they do pretty well, as well as a few other tools that's on the web. And it's then diving into, okay, so now we have this crazy designed interface that makes it as simple as possible to be the best graphic designer you want to be. Now we get to figure out how to build it in a way that it won't go down and it won't break on you. So when you log in tomorrow, it doesn't go down in 5 minutes. It's like, oops, sorry, not available. And so it's like all those little problems that get solved on the way to building something that hides the complexity from the end user. Like that's just it, that keeps the juices going. And it also keeps the creativity aspect for me.
I would imagine that, you know, as you're describing it, it's the same thing that I think with a lot of other professions when people get that moment where like the light bulb goes off. So you're solving this problem, you've got an end user in mind, you've got all these, you know, variable and I can only imagine the number of millions of different things that you have to consider along the way to make something happen, right? And color combinations and, you know, text and being able to drag and drop things. And that when a moment happens, you're just like, oh, I can do it like that. Or this is what you have to, what I need to do to make that work. That there's a, let's call a high, I guess. There's a little high.
Yeah, there's definitely an endorphin rush there. It's like, it's like, oh, yes, we figured it out. There's a path forward. Sometimes it's relief because you have a crazy deadline. So it's like, whew, we figured it out. Now only about 85 hours left to coding this thing. But sometimes I liken it to getting a Lego set, and instead of following the instructions, you get to design the instructions every time you build.
Oh, wow.
And so you get to kind of look at the paper and say, okay, I've got all these different parts. And you're just sitting there kind of maneuvering before you build how it could look. And then you come up with a design that you're great. And you're like, that's the castle I want. And then now you have a pathway to building. Because otherwise you just have a bunch of Lego pieces, right? All these little bits of code and design and all these things that don't really plug in together until you've put them together in a way that works.
Right.
And so then it's like, all right, that gets rid of the decision paralysis of, where do I start? And you're like, all right, well, we have a base to start at. And now that we have a problem to solve, we have a direction forward. And then there's the freedom of, you have all of this within your playground to use to solve this problem. And then once for me, once it's like, I've created that guide now, it's like, all right, cool. I don't have to, sometimes we use other people's guides because it's already been solved, and that's great. And then we build on top of that. So it's like, all right, well, we got the default Lego castle instructions. Now we get to build our own moat, or we get to build our own drawbridge and all these other things that go into a castle. So it makes it pretty fun, pretty exciting, pretty rewarding. But those aha moments are great. Like I said, sometimes it's just the pure endorphin rush, and sometimes it's finally, all right, I can now tell my team we can build this thing.
I bet. And so do you build things as a team, or are you doing things separately and then you bring the component pieces together?
So there's a lot of separate together. So like, it gets break it down in a lot of different ways. So for instance, at my current company, we build academic platforms. And so my team is in charge of online learning. So as a group, we're working on specific components for online learning. There's another group that works on career services. There's another group that works on curriculum.
Okay.
And then within each group, we splinter into two other groups, which is one group that builds online for instructors and support staff, and then one that builds for students and learning. And then within that group, we all have individual tickets that we work on that we then merge together. So while we all have individual tasks, they all continually build up until you get to the final product. So there's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of kind of social design and group, getting to debate and kind of find what the right answer is amongst us all. Excuse me. And then there's a lot of empowerment for us to go and build those pieces, but to support each other as we go.
Okay.
I know for a long time, we've always had this notion of like the computer guy in the basement with like a 25 pack of like Red Bull and glowing monitors, and just like all you hear is like, right. And I think nowadays the programming experience, especially now in the modern sense, is so focused on collaboration because there's so many moving parts. And because there's so many things that we can update that don't require us to wait 6 months and then release it on a CD like we did 20 years ago. Now, because of the web, we can update whenever we want or whenever we need. And so it takes a lot more collaboration, takes a lot more team building, but ultimately it makes, at least for me, it makes it a lot more fun and a lot more social. I know that I can be trusted to do what I need to do, but I have a team that's backing me up and I can work with.
I'm glad to hear there really is like a human side to this, because I was a little, I'm not going to say concerned, but the image that you just talked about is kind of what I had in my head about how things get done. And knowing you for the past couple of years, I've known that that's not really how it works, because you're managing teams, but it's good to know that there are actually human beings on the other side of it, thinking things through, looking for the best solutions and the answers. And quite frankly, we're in a place and time where everything we do is touched by computer technology, software technology in some way. And so just knowing that you guys are thinking about the end user makes me happy. I'll just put it that way. So I'm going to say thank you on behalf of everyone who doesn't have software engineers in their life. I'm saying thank you.
Yeah, and I think the industry has a lot to thank of its customers who demanded more. I think when we talk about all the various ways we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, That's one of the big pieces to it, especially in tech now, is um, if you don't have a team that in some way, shape, or form represents the wideness of your customer base, are you really building the right thing for the right person? Right. Every problem at some point, every application starts with, hey, I have a itch I need to scratch. But once you scratch that itch and you put it out there and other people gravitate, there's other itches now you need to scratch too. And I think with the with people really honing in on a lot more holistic self-care as part of being professional and not just come in, crash, 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 cram, 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 and then you go home and whatever you do, just be back in like 6 hours. Now I think the industry has moved a lot more beyond just the ping pong tables and just the free food to like
Good.
offering all these paths to where we can be humans. One thing I say all the time to my team and to my students is we're not the computers that we program, right? Like we have emotions, we have feelings, we have bad days, we have good days, but we all also have insights. Computers do exactly what we tell them to do.
Right.
And so when it does something wrong, it's because we told it to do something wrong. And that's okay. And I think now that there is this renewed focus and a wider sense on recapturing the humanness of the people building the products, that we're able to kind of make this a much more inclusive space, a much better space. And frankly, I think our products are way, in a general sense, way better than we've ever had it. And it's not just because of the pace of technology. I think it's because of the reasoning and the how in terms of how we build software these
Mm.
days.
That's good to know. You mentioned your students. So, in addition to managing a team, you also are instructing. What is involved in instructing? And then when you finish that, I follow you on Twitter, and you are constantly talking in a language I do not understand. And I'm going to say the simplest thing that I don't understand, which probably just tells people how old I and out of touch I am, is hackathon. But let's start with students and then let's move to hackathon.
Yeah, so I have two primary paths through which I teach. The main one in the classroom is I teach a web development bootcamp. So it's a 6 month program. Currently, I'm teaching it through the UCLA Extension School, and it allows adult learners to be able to shift careers. So we take the 6 months to give students an immersive experience into, here you go from maybe you had some technical experience or none at all. And at the end, you're ready to be at least a junior engineer or developer in the marketplace. And my teaching style focuses a lot more on the practical. Um, you know, I think that programming is a trade and a science. There's a lot of science that goes into everything that makes us that we can see things on the screen and all that. But there is a trade to taking a lot of those lower level blocks and going back to the Lego analogy and building something beautiful with it. Um, and I think we give our students a nice balance of enough of the theory and the science to understand what's happening and enough of the practical tools to be able to be productive in the marketplace. So my goal with that has been, as someone who did eventually drop out of college altogether, and had a very interesting path to becoming an engineering professional. I know how it is for folks who've had different paths in life, but who have the chops, who have the want and the desire to become a programmer, and there shouldn't be anything that blocks them from that. The other piece is going back to that human piece we just talked about. Because of how far-reaching software is today, we don't just need people who know the ins and outs of math theory and who can tell you why zero is not a real number. That screwed me up when I first learned that. um, and all those other things. Like, we need people who can say, hey, in a design context, there's people who learn differently because of different abilities. So we need to make our software more accessible. And quite a few of those engineers are not going to be the folks who look the same as everyone else on the team or had the exact same path. They may be someone who dealt with building accessible products or different types of customer service. And so I try to be both an example and a guide for folks who want to jump into the industry and give them really the best chance for them to figure out how they best learn themselves, so that once they are ready and they finish the program, they can continue to grow on their own afterward. The second way through which I teach primarily nowadays is I do a free live stream on Twitch called Pull Up and Code, where we talk about code. And I'll just pull up random topics and walk people through from beginning to end. I like to take a lot of questions, which means a lot of times I don't finish the programs we start on a stream. But for me, it's not as much about completing every single project as it is giving people a different path into understanding and even getting a little bit of an interest into what they want to do as programmers. And for folks who are already programming, have a space where we can jump in, collaborate. They can come, give me feedback as well. Like, no one's perfect. And so it makes it a nice, fun community for us to kind of crack jokes, write some code, talk about the sneakers in my background, and just not make it so stale and kind of academic as it can feel sometimes.
Awesome. And hackathon.
Hackathons. One of my favorite things in the world. So hackathons, in a lot of ways, are like Ragnar races for engineers.
Thank you for making it in a language I understand.
And so for those in the audience who may not know what a Ragnar is, it's a 36-hour team relay race. You're not individually running for 36 hours. I mean, you're running on adrenaline for 36 hours, but it's a team of 12 who run different legs over the course of 36 hours in 200-ish miles. And a hackathon is much a similar thing. It's a team of folks or individuals who are coding in a marathon fashion for 24 to 48 hours. And the end goal is you have a problem statement in the beginning, and then at the end, everyone's presenting all the different ways they try to tackle it.
Okay.
So sometimes it'll be, hey, this is a hackathon for building awareness tools around COVID, right? So I did one hackathon a few months ago, sponsored by Twilio, which gave you free usage of their text message APIs or software to send messages from phone to phone. And they're like, we want like 3 or 4 different topics. So one could be COVID tools or social engagement during shelter in place, or warning, or finding safe places to go for testing. And so my program that I worked on during that one was instead to build an application for you to check in with yourself, called mindfulness. And so the thing I wanted to go for there was, I know for me, I'm not the biggest journaler. I will look at my notebook and like, I'll see you in a couple of days. But it's helpful for me to check in with myself every day, just to kind of understand what I'm feeling. And so this was going to be a low touch way to say, hey, you get a message that prompts you, "Was good, how you feeling?" You type in how you're feeling, and then we may follow up and say, what's a few words to describe that in more detail. And one of the last things we did on stream, because it's still in progress being built, was to then start to understand your moods using software. So like starting to analyze your words and say, hey, this week your mood looks a little low. Do you have any trusted friends? Do you want us to contact one of them on behalf so y'all can go hang out or, hop on a call? Just to kind of build pathways for people to support each other. After the hackathon, that hackathon was 30 days and virtual. I burnt myself out at the end of it, of course, because I was like, I can do all the things. And I can't do all the things. I can do some, maybe a few. On a good day, many, but not all. But the product, we're still building it bit by bit on stream. And so I'm also using that, not just as a product to talk about code and kind of show people different aspects there, but also to talk about how we manage our mental health as engineers, as folks who are in a world where 9 to 5, we're already always on.
Right.
And now we're in this phase where, due to shelter in place, the place that we're always on never goes away, right? We've all brought work home. And so that's been fun. And so there's a lot of hackathons. There's some like that aim to kind of solve some like social challenges. There's some that are just whimsical. It's like, hey, build the wackiest game you can. There's like a long-running game development hackathon called Ludum Dare, or Dare, I could be pronouncing it wrong, where you have 48 hours to build a game, beginning to end. And there will be like a central theme as part of it. I think one of the last ones I saw, the cycle of life and death was the theme. And so everyone had all these very interesting games that revolved around like the journey of life. Like one game was you burning trees, they go down to the ashes, but like keeping the light on until it gets dark. There's another one that like you start as a cell and then you grow into like this weird creature at the end. And so there's all these different hackathons that allow you to just explore different things with code, but in that kind of Ragnar setting.
So is it like the game that you play where someone starts a story and then the next person builds on the same story, or are you guys? Is it serial or sequential that the participants are doing this? Or are you guys doing things in parallel? See, I do know a couple of technology words.
Yeah, so
I shot my wad with that. So
so yeah, most of the hackathons are pretty parallel, where there's teams all working on their own ideas together. There have been some that have played with ideas like doing something serial, where you take something, they hand it off, and you build on top of it. I'd love to see that in a more like almost as a central focus of a hackathon. You might have just given me an idea. Hmm.
take it, run. Speaking of Ragnar's, take it and run.
Yes. But yeah, usually it's a lot of parallel teams working on their individual
Okay.
ideas. The interesting thing is just how widely different the ideas can be, even though everyone's in the same room. Or I guess these days, we're all kind of split apart, but everyone's all has the same context. Here's the tools we give you to build stuff for free, so you don't have to pay for anything while you're hacking here. And here's the problem statement, and just how wide the range of what we think to do with that problem statement is.
Okay, that's interesting to know because in my head, when hacking does not have like the best connotation. So the first thing that came to me was that there were these attempts to break into things and maybe using it for good, but that was the end result. So I'm happy to know that there's a more humanitarian effort or whimsical or just fun effort behind it and not something necessarily nefarious.
Well, there's those hackathons too. There's a very infamous conference called DEF CON, where they talk about all things security. Uh, and if you ever happen to be Vegas during that conference, or you're going to that conference, let's just say it's advised that you don't connect to any public Wi-Fi that you don't know of, and that you don't plug into any jacks into any random walls. Uh,
Jeez. You probably shouldn't do that anyway. You're making me scared. You're
I
making
mean, that's kind of what the conference is telling you, is like, don't do these things anyway. But at a conference full of security professionals, you're bound to get someone that says, well, you should have learned a lesson. You're at this conference for a reason. Um, and then there's other ones where the whole goal is to kind of do some cybersecurity like testing. And there's actually even this notion of like red team, blue team within security, where you're either focusing on hardening from the standpoint of you're doing the attacks to understand where you can have holes, or you're doing the defense to understand where you can block and be proactive. Um, so yeah, I mean, hacking in every sense of the word, it can be used in a hackathon. Um, while there are these maybe hackers for nefarious things, um, it's the same tool used for good and for maybe not so good, which is the
as most things are, right? You
yeah.
use anything for good. So let's talk about some of the lessons you just mentioned. Lessons and along your journey, if you were talking to someone who was interested, and you do frequently, obviously with the teaching that you do, someone who's interested in going into programming and coding, and what are some of the things that you've learned on your journey that you are sharing and imparting with your students?
Whew, that's a great question. I think the first piece for me, which has been pretty important throughout my career, just even my journey and growing, has been you will figure out how best you learn. I think a lot of times we look and say, oh, someone did this boot camp and now they're making 150K, or someone bought these 3 books and now they're writing courses online. And for some of us, that might not be the most productive way for us to learn.
Mm.
A lot of us can take the exact same course and get very little or a lot from it, even though we're in the same seat. And so that's the one thing I try to really impart on folks is focus on how you learn and how you synthesize information, and always optimize on that. You can always grab a book and then figure out how best to put that in a format that you can learn, whether it's an ebook, paper form, etc. The second piece is that And I think I saw bits and pieces of this in different ways of people talking about resilient leadership and other things, but just resiliency in general. Um, our goal shouldn't be to have zero errors. Our goal should be to have zero repeat of errors.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
I
Yes.
like to tell folks that if you're making a mistake that no one in your circle or no one in your sphere has ever made, then now you're truly innovating because you're doing something no one's done before. And I see that as also partially my responsibility to remove gatekeeping in my own way of letting people know where my pitfalls have been and the hard lessons I've learned and the ways I've learned them so they can go make new mistakes. Like go do things I couldn't even dream of getting wrong. Because then that means you're doing what I've been doing much, much better. Uh, and then just the third piece of on that same note is we're not perfect and it's okay. Just the quicker and the easier that we get to it'll I know for a lot of us, especially if you're super like gun ho and super motivated, the notion of quote unquote failing or not succeeding at something the first time can be daunting.
Right.
But failure is a chance to succeed more intelligently, is a way one of my
Absolutely.
older frat brothers put it.
Absolutely.
And it probably took me through all of my 20s and maybe the beginning of my 30s for me to really let that sink in. Um, but everything there's a lesson for growth. So like those are the things that really have stuck with me, and I think in this in the last chunk of my career thus far has been helped me to make even better decisions.
I think your point about learning and failing goes back to kind of where you started about creativity. And particularly as a leader, creating an environment where people they have the permission to fail allows them to be freer to be creative instead of you know sort of hunkering down because they're so afraid if they make a mistake that it's going to have a negative repercussion. And so I love that this concept of being free to fail, and it's kind of like fail fast, fail smart, learn from it, grow from it, and then move on. And so I love, as particularly as a leader, I think it's important regardless, but as a leader, as an instructor, as someone who has other people looking up to them, just giving people permission to do it and do it their way, right? To
Right.
put their own stamp and personality in what they're doing. So you're doing work with, you said your students generally are adult learners through the UCLA extension, right?
Yeah.
Are you working with kids or doing anything that's help? We've got a whole thing going on with STEM careers and education, and helping young people move into careers in technology, not just computers, but technology in general. I had Stacy on a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about technology from a different perspective. She's in the sciences, um,
Mm.
and this our need to encourage our kids to do to explore not just math and science, but computers and technology in ways that will move us from where we are to the next generation, right? Because we've gotten here from people, you and others who have brought us to this place, but we still have to encourage, people coming up to move forward with the technology. Are you involved in efforts to help young people in the area of coding?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to sit on a couple of boards and also work hands on with a couple of programs. There's one in particular in the Bay Area that I've really enjoyed a lot called Bay Area Inspires Awards. And so we award grants to young adults age 16 to 25 who have some sort of initiative they want to do to help improve their environment and their community.
Oh, cool.
And so one of the first programs that I helped support with one of the fellows was to take this. There's this computer kit called the Kano, which allows you to kind of put it together and make your own mini computer. And then the computer itself has software that teaches you from turning it on and learning a few commands to actually learning how to program. And so we actually instituted this program as an after-hours program in a couple middle schools in East Oakland. And so that was super awesome to see just how we were able to modify that, how the fellow Sam has been able to push that forward as she's rolled it out in successive years. And currently I work with another fellow, Clinae, who's been working on this initiative she calls Tech Fit Creative, where she wants to combine healthy living and healthy eating with also pathways and knowledge about technical careers. And so she's getting ready to launch an online course. We had to shift plans because of COVID. But these have been some of the ways that I kind of be grassroots here in the Bay and kind of help the communities around me. I've also, in the past, worked with programs like Hack the Hood, like whether it was talking or hosting them at previous companies I worked at. And I also have been a longtime mentor with Code 2040, where we bring in university folks for fellowships in the summer and teach them, well, first give them market rate, really solid internship opportunities here in the Bay and also in New York. But there's also combined with a racial equity component so that they're also going out there to fight for change in a lot of different ways in their communities and make tech also more equitable as they then enter the industry in a couple of years. So it's been great to kind of support these programs and a lot more that I've worked in. I've discovered that management and instructing from an adult standpoint has been great for me in terms of helping with when people talk about the quote unquote pipeline problem of helping prepare people who can jump in now and supporting those who are there, but then also giving back to the youth in ways that one, I was giving back to, but also in ways that there wasn't any resources yet to give back in that way, right? Like, when I was growing up, the web wasn't it wasn't even a thing really for almost all of us. And now we're at a space where there's so many more resources out there that I think we can do even more. So I try to make sure whatever I do is sustainable, but also just kind of aligns with my overall piece, which I think for me, my mission in the DEI space in tech is providing access to information, access to pathways, access to skills, and then helping people get to where they want to be, whether they're 12 or 22 or 32.
I love that. Awesome. So we are not going to get away without talking about the sneaker collection behind you. I know you as a runner. I'm looking at some of those shoes. They do not look like running shoes to me. So, what's going on back there? And they're in cubes. What
Yes.
is going on behind you? Dude.
Yeah. So if you look, I guess to my left, there's a row of stack of sneakers on that left side that all have different colors but look like they're the same way. I'm a huge fan of. Yeah. So there's
a box at the top, like this is my green column, and this is my red column, and over here is like this a multicolored column. What, dude?
So I collect a lot of SB Dunk sneakers from Nike, which are the skateboarding series. They used to be basketball sneakers, but there's a lot of indie skate shops and other designers who make these very intricate designs that I feel like in different parts speak to a lot of parts of my personality. So, and then there's some that I just really like. So like the green and yellow ones over there, those are a tribute to the 1990 Oakland A's in the World Series.
Okay.
The light green ones below that, that's green and black, those are called the Tiffany Dunks. They use a almost actual Tiffany blue. They can't use the actual color because it wasn't a Tiffany sneaker, but yeah. But and it has like a nice little like diamond logo on the tongue. Let's see. I can actually see all my sneakers from the camera. So there's one over here that's the hockey. It's a Bo Jackson sneaker, but it imagines what if Bo Jackson played hockey, since he was known for playing all these different sports. And so it has like his own cartoon logo inside of it. The bottom of the shoe is like a clear color, and it has like a logo of a broken tooth because of hockey. And so some of them are very whimsical and funny, but some of them are like very interesting kind of colorways that I think all speak to who I am. One of my favorite shoes is the ones you can see on top of a gold box. Those are Ferris Bueller Dunks. And so every part of that shoe is modeled after some part of Ferris Bueller's outfit from the movie.
Are you
It took me 4 years to find those sneakers
Oh, wow.
completely brand new, like unworn or anything, and finally did. And so those were my quote unquote grails. But yeah, I like sneakers. I
Yeah,
also have a
so
running problem.
they don't get worn. They're in hermetically sealed boxes. And, okay, cool.
Oh no, that's the other thing. I wear my sneakers.
Oh, okay.
I wear them. I'm not super obsessive about cleaning them, because I'm for me sneakers are meant to be worn. So I am a sneakerhead, but I'm not. My lane with sneakers is not like the pristine, priceless. It's like no, I want like I buy these sneakers not so you can always see them on Zoom because before 2020, how many people saw me on Zoom, right? Um, and so I can go out and wear them in the street and make fun outfits with them, and also they're all comfortable, so I can walk around in them all day.
That's cool.
Uh, and then I do have a running sneaker column. Right now, instead of a column, they're like all on the bottom behind my chair. But I have like my workout Metcons. I have my Hawaii, my sneakers from Kona that I got from the run shop down there. So yeah, I also have an obsessive few, maybe 12 pairs of running and workout sneakers as well that I rotate.
It's all good. I probably have the same. They're not in hermetically sealed boxes, but I have my share of running shoes, I can assure you. So, Jayson, thank you so much for coming on Love Your Work, sharing about what you do, what you love about it. I have a new appreciation for the work that you do. And I will think of you and your brethren and sisterin every time I'm in Canva, in Zoom, in Udemy and Kajabi and all the rest, remembering that you took the time, or someone like you took the time to think about me, so that I could have the experiences that I have. And for the most part, with the exception of, the blocks in my head about doing things, I enjoy the experiences that I have on, my web experiences overall. So, again, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for coming in. I missed you. Haven't seen you in forever. We
I
haven't
know
run
it's
a
been
race in over a year.
ages.
We haven't run together in over a year. Looking forward to 2021 and whatever that holds for getting back on the pavement and
Yes.
bikes, right? Because we didn't get to ride, in the bike
Right.
race last year for other reasons, and then they didn't have one this year. So, maybe next year or year after. So,
Yeah, we'll figure it out. And first off, thank you for having me. I love the platform. I love what you've been doing. And really just getting us out there to really talk about because these are the things that I think a lot of us are looking for that we never know is out there, right? Everyone's individual story, and all the lessons we can glean from them, and just the relatability too. Um, and Captain, we will definitely get on the road again soon. If I'm ever up by your way, I will make sure I have mask and bike in tow, and we can like roll down the pavement and
that
get
would be
some
awesome.
good old team activity going.
That
But
would be
yes,
awesome. I
many thanks for inviting me here.
you know what, it was my absolute pleasure. I've been trying to get you for a while. What I really love is having, I have a lot of guests that come on who work for themselves, and I know you have a component of things that you do where you are working for yourself, but having people who work as employees for other people, and as contractors for companies, is, I think, important to share the message that there are all kinds of ways to do work that you love. And so, and I think it's important for people to know that in technology, that it's not all, you know, boots on the ground, head in the, just typing away. And that there's creativity and opportunity to express yourself in what you do. So I think it was very important for you to be here and to share what you do in your story. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And for those of you watching, if you're interested in, um, learning more about Jayson, I will put his Twitter handle And if he is okay with being contacted, if you've got, questions about web design and programming and things like that, I will make that information available as well. So have a great rest of your day, and thank you for dropping in for it. Love your work. Take
Thank
care.
you. Talk to you again soon.